Hey, what's up everybody? Gareth Foley here with FCP Euro, and today we're going to be doing a buyer's guide on the E9X 3 Series. I do want to stress in this video, I'm only going to be talking about North American models, so basically United States and Canada and also Mexico would be involved in this. And I do want to make this point very clear from the get-go. We are only going to be talking about the standard E9X models. Won't be touching base with the M3. We're going to do a separate video on that altogether because it does deserve its own video. It's kind of a unique model in its own right. Why do we call it the E9X? Well, that's just simply the easier, more ambiguous way of saying I have a 5th generation 3 Series. The one thing that you need to know about the E9X right now is they're out of production, which means any of these cars that you buy are going to be out of warranty. The good news for you is if you're looking to get one of these cars, the time is now, simply because there's so many options out there. And really you have the pick of the litter in terms of whatever you want, in terms of equipment, options, engines, transmissions. You can literally get it right now. You can find these cars available for anywhere for a couple thousand, upwards of 20,000, or even more depending on what model it is and how desirable it is. The cars are still relatively new, so you're never gonna have an issue with finding parts for them. The parts market is massive for these cars. And because of that, quite frankly, a lot of the parts on these cars are really not that expensive, with the exception of a couple items here and there. The E9X 3 Series had a bunch of different competitors. Primary competitor would be the Mercedes W204 C-Class. We also had the Audi B7 A4, and to a degree, the B6 a little bit. You also have vehicles in the Japanese sectors, such as the G37. That was another primary competitor, but when you think about competitors to the 3 Series in terms of driving and cross models and similar options, things like that, those are 3 models that really come to mind. So one thing that I want to talk about in this is BMW's modeling system. One thing that's universal for pretty much every BMW model is the way in which BMW badges the vehicle. There is no difference between the 325i and the 330i in terms of the engine size. They're all 3-liter engines. However, there's a low output version and there's a high output version. So a 330i would have the high output version of the engine, which is designated by the 3.0 and 330. 3 is obviously the series, basically engine size or engine output, and then you have the little I at the end. There's a lot of things that go back and forth about what the I is. It literally just stands for fuel injection. Now you also might see some vehicles that say like XI at the end. Well, the X stands for X-Drive, which is BMW's all-wheel drive system. However, BMW did sort of change the way in which they were naming vehicles. So on, let's say, a 328i X-Drive, it would say 328i on the trunk, but then there'll be a little X-Drive emblem on the fender. And actually this E90 behind me has a perfect example of that. Let's talk about the way the car looks because, well, let's face it, that's actually an important factor when you're looking to buy a car. You have something called LCI, and that's BMW's version of facelift. It's basically called life cycle impulse, and it's a way in which they update the model to modernize it a little bit more and get a little bit more life out of it. So on the E90 and the E91, which both came out in 2006, basically from 2006 all the way up to the 2008 model year, that's your pre-facelift or pre-LCI models. And then from 2009 to 2011/2012, well, 2011 for the sedan and 2012 for the wagon, that's when you have your LCI models available. And for the E92 and the E93 coupe and convertible, first model year being 2007 all the way up to 2010 is your pre-facelift or pre-LCI models. And then from 2011 to 2013, you have your LCI models. Basically, it's mostly visual on the outside, so different bumper covers, more modern looking headlights. And also one other important detail, at least on the E90 and the E91, is you can also tell that there's a significant difference in the hood. It's basically little visual tweaks like that that help differentiate your pre-facelift cars to your post-facelift cars. Every single model had the option for a sports package or non-sports package. And really the primary difference between those models is sport package got bigger wheels with lower profile tires, had a more aggressive front bumper, sports seats on the inside, sports steering wheel. And the non-sports package car, it would be just simply more basic, a lot more straightforward, looks a lot plainer. When you're shopping around for these cars, you'll see cars that have a different appearance package on it. Just keep in mind that that also does affect the interior equipment as well. So try to test drive and try to look at a bunch of different cars when you're shopping for it, and that way you'll be sure that you buy the one that's right for you. There's actually 4 different body types available within the E9X lineup. You have the E90 sedan, the E91 wagon, the E92 coupe, and the E93 convertible. First, we have the E90 sedan, which is available from 2006 to model year 2011. You have the 325i, the 325xi, 328i, 328i xDrive, your 330i, 330xi, 335d, 335i, and the 335i xDrive. The E91 wagon was available from 2006 up to 2012. For that, you have the 325xi, the 328i, and 328i xDrive. Next, you have your E92 coupe, which is available from 2007 to 2013. You have the 328i, 328i xDrive, 335i, 335i xDrive, and the 335is. And finally, we have the E93 convertible, which is available from model year 2007 up to 2013. And this is the simplest model lineup in North America. We have the 328i, the 335i, and the 335is. The E93 is unique in the respect that it never got BMW's xDrive system. It was available as rear-wheel drive model only. So just talked about the way that BMW names their models. And with that, I think it's a really good segue to go into the different types of engines that are available in the E9X 3 Series lineup. There were 2 variations of the N52 engine used in the E9X 3 Series. 2006 model years had the first gen N52 engine, which came in a high output and a low output version. So any model as with 330 made 255 horsepower, any 325i model made about 215. And then your 328 models from 2007 up until 2013 came with the second gen N52 engine, which made about 230 horsepower and came in a ULEV version, which was the N52N, and the SULEV version, which was the N51. And what ULEV and SULEV is the N52N was the ultra low emissions vehicle, which was sold in all 50 states. And the SULEV, which is a super ultra low emissions vehicle. Both of those models would still be sold in CARB states, but in CARB states, you'll find a higher concentration of N51 engine vehicles from 2007 until 2013. It's also worth noting that those 3 versions of the N52 engine, those are all naturally aspirated. But moving up in the BMW E9X model range, you now come into the 335s. Now, the 335i, any of the models from 2007 up to 2013, there is a distinct early version and later version. The early 335s from 2007 until 2010 came with the N54 engine. Now, we did a video on the N54 engine, but basically the 335i is the first mass-produced BMW 3 Series that came with a turbocharged engine. The N54 was actually a twin turbo engine, so used 2 of the same size turbos for bank 1 and bank 2. It is basically a tuner's dream. You can make a lot of power with it, which is what a lot of people do, or you can leave it stock. But that engine was rated for 300 horsepower. It made more than that. Also worth noting that there was a special version of the N54, which was used in the 335is, which was only available as a coupe and a convertible. That was the N54T engine, and one thing that made that different from the N54 was it had an overboost function, which gave you a short burst of extra power for a short period of time. The N54T, of course, was also used in the 1M. After that, from 2011 until 2013, you then get the N55 engine, which is a single twin scroll turbo, or what BMW calls twin power turbo. The N55, it was a response to some of the shortcomings of the N54 in terms of reliability. It's not as tuner friendly, but it is a more reliable engine, and that also makes roughly 300 horsepower. If you're looking for something a little more reliable, maybe your 2011s to 2013s with the N55 is going to be the better option for you. Finally, it's worth talking about the 335D, which is the only diesel variant available in the E9X lineup. Now, the M57 N2 engine is simply a torque monster, perfect highway cruiser, but that was only available in the facelift E90 sedan from 2009 to 2011. One thing you need to know about modern diesels is they have a lot of emissions related components on them with selective catalyst reduction, DPF, all of that stuff, which unfortunately makes them expensive to own long term because some of those components break and they are expensive to repair. However, there are plenty of them rolling around, and you actually can get quite good deals on them from time to time. So as we talked about the engines, we're going to talk a little bit more about the drivetrain. All these models, with the exception of the convertible, were available in either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And part of the drivetrain also includes the transmission. Pretty much had your choice between 6-speed manuals or 6-speed automatics. And for the 335is, you got the 7-speed DCT, the one that was also shared with the E92, E93, E90 M3. But that's kind of a standalone model unto its own right. Pretty much all of your E9X models are either going to be a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed auto. The 6-speed manuals that are available were both from Getrag. The Getrag 6-speed would be in the naturally aspirated cars. Pretty much every N52 powered car would get the 6-speed from Getrag, while the 335i models got the beefier 6-speed ZF box, which can handle more torque. The 6-speed autos were shared between ZF's 6HP model lineup, which is a very popular transmission, which was put literally in millions of vehicles. You got the 6HP19, which was the early version, and the 6HP21, which was the later, more updated version. And weirdly enough, some random 328 models from 2007 up to 2009 would be mixed between the ZF 6HP and GM's GA6 L45R transmission. One thing that's important on any BMW model is the chassis, the way that it drives. Now, the E9X 3 Series was a major departure in design from pretty much every previous 3 Series. The E36 and the E46 previous generations pretty much shared a very similar chassis design. The E9X varied drastically in the respect to that. The front suspension was switched over to a multi-link McPherson strut style front suspension, which pretty much means you have your McPherson strut assembly, which is load bearing, and basically it's a pivot point for, front steering, and 2 lower control arms. Also, the rear suspension moved over to what's known as a semi-trailing arm style multi-link rear suspension. So instead of a single trailing arm and a couple of control arms, you now have basically 5 control arms on each side of the rear suspension. One benefit to this suspension is it's a lot more modern and it allows for much better tire contact with the road and actually improves the handling characteristics of the chassis drastically. What's nice about it is regardless of the model, if it's an X-Drive car, all those suspension components are going to be the same. If it's a rear-wheel drive car, all the suspension components are the same regardless of the model. Another thing that's important to talk about in terms of chassis is when you talk about sports suspension versus non-sports suspension vehicles, what that is specifically referring to is the strut, shocks, springs, and typically sway bars that are installed. What's cool about that is, let's just say you happen to find a really, really good deal on some takeoffs that somebody took off a lower mileage vehicle and you want to go to a factory sports suspension, all that stuff literally bolts up. You don't need to change control arms. You don't need to do any drastic changes. All that stuff literally carries over because it's all the same platform. But when you're looking for replacement parts, specifically struts, shocks, and springs, you do want to look that stuff up by VIN because there is really no way to know specifically, unless you have the build sheet of the car, what suspension you have. And what's nice here, FCP Euro, we can do that for you, make sure you get the right parts. Another really, really important thing when it comes to any vehicle is the braking system. One thing that I think a lot of people find confusing, especially in the world of BMW, is you might have a sport package car, but that doesn't actually mean that your brakes are really different or any special. At least in the E9X range, all the brakes are pretty much standardized. Starting from your ABS and traction control system, it comes with a Teebs Mark 60 ABS system, which is, well, at the time was probably one of the most advanced road-going ABS systems you can have. Another thing that's worth mentioning is the brake rotors, brake pads, all these brake parts are actually very standardized. There's only a handful of brake parts that these cars would have been installed with in the factory. The only thing you actually need to worry about when ordering brakes for these cars is sometimes you need to take body type into account, and sometimes you need to take production date into account. So sometimes you might see that there's a production date split in brake kits or brake components like that, but you don't need to worry about packages or anything like that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, this is a very basic overview of the E9X 3 Series. We're gonna have a bunch of videos coming out that talk about the details, repairs, that type of information that you really wanna know if you're looking at buying one of these cars. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button with the notification bell so when we upload those videos, you're one of the first ones to watch it. Also follow us along on all of our other social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also follow our DIY blog because we have a lot of really good technical stuff that goes up there. Have any questions or comments on this video, go ahead and leave in the comment box below. Make sure we get back to you. Hit the like button, and as always, I'll see you for the next one. Later.